Lori Popow here. Today I want to show you what I usually do if I have leftover epoxy. Many times we have eggs that just didn't work out. This is one that didn't work out for me. It was started with an egg bot, and I didn't really care for the design, but I'm going to change this egg in time. I started with this design by taking cord and wrapping it on the design. I glued it. I used some of the tacky glue and put a thin line on the dark ink there, and then I just glued the band around here because I wanted to separate and have little panels. I then scalloped around with the gold cord. Now what I'm going to do is use that leftover epoxy. A lot of times we have the epoxy where there's not enough to actually put on an egg, but we have enough where we could put designs or enhance another egg, like this one here that I didn't care for. So I will take my epoxy, and at this time what I want to do is just get a little bit of it. I have wax paper down to work on. And here I have, oops, let me see if I can get this turned right. This is Pearl X powder. It's pigment, a real pretty blue here. I'm going to just put some of this powder right onto this glob of epoxy. Let me get my brush out of the way. Now I'm going to mix this up. Just like this. And what I'm going to do is scoop up a little bit of this epoxy and apply it in this area. The idea here is that we need to get it against the cord so that it fills in all the spaces. I'm pulling it right into this little area here so that it gets tucked in there real nicely. So this here's one way I can use up my epoxy, and this will be swirly and this really pretty blue color. I need to move some of these things out of my way. Another use is to take the epoxy. Let's fill in another area. This time I'm using my paintbrush, my disposable handy dandy paintbrush, and again we're trying to get in the little areas. Make sure that all the areas are covered. And what I'm using now are these itty bitty little micro beads. I'm going to set my egg down so I can work a little better. I'm going to spoon out some onto this epoxy. And just let it fill in. In all those areas. Need to set my egg down. At this time, my epoxy is starting to run off a little bit. Tend to that. Now, what I have are broken pieces of eggshells. These are broken pieces of Pisanki eggs that either the egg had actually broken or it was an egg that just didn't come out right. So I break up the shells even more to smaller pieces. Now again, I will take my epoxy and fill in another space here. And as I said, I try to get it in all the small spaces also, and up against the card. Using my tweezers, I will take pieces of eggshell and put it into the epoxy. Some of these pieces are a little bit too big for this area. That'll work. So we would continue filling this in until we like all the colors. And that's another way of using up extra epoxy and also taking a damaged or ugly egg and changing it into another egg. And again, I can take my cord and just glue it into all different designs. It's best to make smaller designs or smaller spaces because the epoxy, if it's too big of a space, it you seem to have a harder time of it running over. If you want, you can also take this epoxy and dab it in between your pieces for another effect.